Hi, I'm Mark Gibbs with The Great Outdoors, and thanks for joining us if this is your first time, and if you're coming back, it's good to see you again. This week we're going to try something a little different. We've hit a few bigger topics already. This week we're going to try a little project. I wanted to show you how to take a piece of acacia wood and turn it into a beautiful staghorn plaque for a wall or a centerpiece for a table. You can use all sorts of different plants for this, but we're going to start with the staghorn. So we've got our acacia wood. First, I want to talk about the things you're going to need for this. This is a very cost-effective project also. So if you've got kids or you're just looking for something easy to do, very hands-on, and not over-the-top crazy expensive, this is a great little project. We've got our acacia wood that's been drilled. We've got our little divot down in there. We do sell these pre-prepared with that little divot for you. You need some potting soil. We're going to start with this a little bit moist, so we've got all the air out of that. Once we set the plant down in on this guy, it's going to contact well. It's going to get those roots to bind up a little earlier, and you're not going to have that little settling issue you get when there's a lot of air in the soil. Got some great sphagnum moss. I've gotten this wet already. I've stirred it up really well. We want this to be bound together super tight when we go to put it on the plant. Then we've got some fishing line. This is a 30-pound test, pretty nice and sturdy. We'll want that a strong test, so when we start binding over the crown, we won't have it breaking loose. And then we've got our staple gun. Something with some longer staples too, just so you can sink down into that wood. You don't want to use a wood that's going to decay fast or break down fast, so you don't lose the integrity of the plaque over time. So harder wood is pretty nice. The acacia wood is really good for that purpose. So I'm going to sneak my glasses on so I don't catch myself with the stapler here. What we want to do first is, when we put our first little staple in at the edge of our hole, I like to tie off the staple with the fishing line. That way when we start tugging, as you'll see in a minute here, we're not going to pull this underneath the staple. Even though we think it may be nice and tight, it may just slide right underneath that staple initially, and we won't even know it until it's too late. So I just tie it off with a couple of quick knots here, make sure it's nice and secure. We'll trim that tail off here. Now we've got our staghorn fern. I'm going to take a little bit of our potting soil, put it down into this divot. Just go around the edges of the divot and down into the center. So we've got a little bit of a barrier between the acacia wood and the new root ball of the plant. We've got a beautiful staghorn here. Some people joke around with me on this, but every plant kind of has a face. If you look at this guy, definitely it's fuller on this one side. That's probably where the crown flare is going to come out from. So when we take this guy out, just going to turn it upside down, let it pop out on its own. We're going to tickle these roots a little bit. You can see the root system's not too extensive. If you wanted to start out with a 2-inch plant, that's fine. If you wanted to go with a 6-inch plant, you just want to have your divot to be a little bit larger, a little bit deeper. This divot also does have a hole in the back for drainage and airflow purposes, depending on where you may be locating it. So I've tickled off the roots here a little bit. I'm going to set it down into my potting soil in the divot here. I'm going to give it a little bit of a twist just to get that soil that's coming in contact with a nice little tight kiss. Now, I want to keep my fishing line out of the way at the moment, and I'm going to grab some of my sphagnum moss, wring it out real good, kind of make a little pancake out of it. And then I'm going to start coming around inside the edge of that fishing line all the way up to the crown of the plant, the neck of the plant. And I'm going to start packing that moss onto and over the root ball with my little pancakes all the way around the crown of the plant up onto the soil that's there. If you wanted to add a little bit more soil as your first layer and then put some moss on it, that's fine. If it were a 6-inch, I'd probably do that. But as a 4-inch, that root ball is pretty tight and compact right now, so it's got plenty of room and plenty of root to grow from the soil it's got going on. We're going to add our last little bit of pancake to wrap around the rest of this crown back here. You want to make sure you get it all the way up to the tip top. We don't want any soil eroding away from the plant when we go to water it. So just make sure you've got moss tight all the way down to the bottom, all the way up to the top. Okay, now comes the fun part. The cool thing is, again, there's no science to this. I've got my first staple in there. It's nice and tight. I'm going to pull all the way up over the neck of the plant here. I'm going to come down on the back side, grab it with my thumb, make sure I'm getting a really nice tight connection with the acacia wood. Staple that guy down nice and tight. From here on out, I'm literally going to leave my fishing line here. I'm going to thread back up over the other side of the crown now and try to come back to my mama staple, my first staple. That way I know with my first 2 turns, I've gotten 100% of a wrap. And from here on out, there's really no science to it. This is the fun part. You can bind this as many times as you want. I typically start flaring out a little bit from the original one, maybe a 1/4 inch next on the separation, coming back over to the When you're hearing that second shot, that means I missed on that first one. So keep on spinning. Come back over with another gather. Come down nice and tight, pinch with my thumb. Stapler. We're just going to keep repeating this, and again, you can do it as many times as you want. The moss is going to go ahead and fluff up over time and cover up. You're just not even going to see that fishing line. It's going to disappear. The next question people are going to have is maybe on watering. I prefer really to dunk these for watering purposes. You're not messing with the moss when you do that. You're keeping the soil intact. If you're trying to hit it with a water hose or with a watering can, you may have a chance to hit it too hard and may cause some erosion somewhere between your fishing line runs. So try to be careful when you're watering these. Be gentle. If you want to use a supplement, that's even better. Fish emulsion or something like that along the way. And then over time, what's going to happen is our little flare that we have coming out now, that's going to be growing and growing, and it's actually going to grow over this moss and begin to create its own little footprint. If you feel like it's getting too big for its situation, one of the coolest things you can do is just add some more moss in another layer and then come back with some more fishing line and anchor it back down that way. You don't want to go over the flare that it's put out, but you can come on the back side of it or to the sides of it and fill that out even more. So over time, you could literally picture this entire plaque being eaten by the flare from the staghorn and then also by the moss and how far. I could probably do 3 more runs in the life of this plant to get it to eat this whole piece of wood. So give it a shot. It's really a fun project. And if you have any questions, come see us at The Great Outdoors or give us a holler on one of our social media, and we'd love to help you out.